Okay, there we go. So, Tammy, just start by you just giving a quick rundown of like your history in animal welfare, just really quick, just to give people an idea of where you're coming from.
Sure. I started my career in animal welfare in Austin, Texas, at the Austin Humane Society underneath Karen Medicus. And that was in 1994. I was a vet tech before that. Um, and Austin Humane Society is a well-known organization that is limited intake and serves Austin and the general area there. And then in 2001, I went up to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I took a position there as VP of Operations for the Humane League of Lancaster County. And I was there until 2005, and then I came down to Key West and took the executive director job. I was lucky to have it for the Florida Keys SPCA. I was here till 2009 and then I was blessed with my baby boy who's now 17. And freaked out a little bit because my whole career in life was centered around animals. Children were not part of my life plan. Um, so we moved back to Pennsylvania to be closer to family, thinking that I would never have the opportunity to come back down to Key West. And on the drive out of here, I was already grieving leaving this community and this organization. But we were lucky to have an opportunity to come back in 2012 to um, man a capital campaign and get this new facility built and um, be part of this organization as executive director again. So I actually grew up in animal welfare. My dad was the executive director for the Montgomery County Humane Society in Rockville, Maryland in the
Oh, wow.
70s, late 80s. So I roamed the halls as a very young girl, and that's where my affinity for animal welfare was born, and I
Yeah.
to help animals. So
I bet that's you've been all through it. You've been in a lot of different, you've seen this from a lot of different angles over a long amount of time. And lucky you landed in Key West. I have to say, when we reached out initially about just connecting with who will let the dogs out as a shelter, Nancy and I both were like, oh, let's go. But Key West is a hike, so we do hope to someday get down there. But we really enjoyed that conversation that we had with you, and that's why I asked you to join me for this conversation because I feel like you have had a really good seat for the show, for all of what has happened and what has changed in animal sheltering. Pretty much, I'm going to really want to focus mostly on pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic time, just because that's when we witnessed so much change from the outside. We were traveling, going places, and we were seeing the changes, but you were actually in there. You were there experiencing it. So I really wanted to have you talk about what you saw from the inside. Like, what was it like, say, in 2017, 18, or early, if you'd like, and then what happened during the pandemic and what has happened since the pandemic, in what you witnessed in animal welfare in Key West and Florida in general.
okay. So pre-pandemic for us down here, that was a very busy time. We were actually operating out of a dilapidated facility that had rats, crumbling concrete. It flooded in a heavy rain. We would have to dig trenches in the middle of the night to divert water away from the kennels.
Oh, jeez.
Um, so in 2017, 18, we were at the tail end of a capital campaign to build the facility that we're in now. Um, we moved into this facility February of 2019, just as the pandemic was hitting. Um, it was pretty interesting actually because when we were at the old facility, we were full, we were at capacity. We moved into this building, moved all the animals over here, and adoption slowed. There was very little um, interaction between us and the community with respect to people surrendering animals. Everything sort of just paused. It just stopped down here. Um,
Right when the pandemic began, which was 2020,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, no, well, it was, I feel like it was just started to begin March of 2019, right?
No,
No.
2020. 2020, 2026 in my head only because my son graduated from high school and missed all of that. So I know about that. But
We
yeah.
moved into the building and then the pandemic hit,
Okay.
and it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to figure out how to care for these animals and also respond to the community because we had a lot of individuals in the community that needed help with their pets. So we sort of had to shift our mission just a little bit and became more of we started focusing on our intake diversion programs. So things like our Safe Haven program, where we would hold animals for individuals that didn't have somewhere to live or were stuck somewhere or had a medical emergency or were in a domestic abuse situation. Um, our wellness clinics sort of morphed into delivering food and also helping with minor medical care, those sorts of issues. Um, Spay neuter paused, right? Like it just basically stopped. Behavior resources, we were still having that picked up a little bit because we were having more animals that were having more behavior issues and people were struggling with it because they were home, they were with their dogs at home and things were happening. Um, and then obviously the pet pantry, which I talked about. We have a pet pantry that provides food for people that can't afford it. So that really kicked off. Um, Post-pandemic,
Did you guys see lots of adoptions during the pandemic time when people were all looking for puppies or dogs? Did you guys experience that at all down there?
no.
No.
And I read about and heard about that happening, around the country. We didn't
Yeah.
have a flood of people coming in here wanting animals. It's sort of, we still had people wanting to adopt, but we were closed,
Yeah.
right? So, but we didn't, if somebody contacted the facility and wanted to adopt an animal, we were sort of trying to make that happen so that we could get animals out of the shelter. It was just a
Right.
very difficult thing to manage. But there wasn't a flood of people coming in here wanting
Hmm.
animals. And there also wasn't a flood of people surrendering animals.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, no, everything just
Stop.
paused.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Post-pandemic, we also haven't had a lot of returns. Like I'm reading a lot of colleagues and other shelters around the country that have experienced because of, I guess, that mass influx of people wanting to adopt animals, they were having returns, right? At
Right.
post-pandemic. We didn't experience that either. Um, so we're pretty fortunate in
Yeah.
that.
Well, I
But
guess if you didn't adopt a ton out, you don't
yeah,
get a ton back.
no.
Yeah.
Um, I think the biggest change that we saw post-pandemic was we were getting animals from outside our county.
Talk more about that. We talked about that on the call. You guys are you an open intake? What would you call yourselves? Open intake?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
We're an open admission facility. We take every animal that we're presented with within our jurisdiction. So that's
Which is,
mile marker 0 to mile marker 70 in the Florida Keys. So that's Key West to just north of Marathon.
okay.
Um, what has been increasing is individuals that either find an animal on the road and want to do a good thing, get it off the road, get it out of danger, bring it to their local shelter for help, are being turned away at some of the larger organizations in the state of Florida. And people out of desperation are actually calling us at the very end of the state
Yeah.
wanting to drive. We've had people call from Jacksonville and
Wow.
Gainesville because they've found an animal and went to the organization and they were turned away and they didn't know what to do with it. And so they're asking to bring the animal down here. Just a couple weekends ago, we had an individual that had two cats that she needed to surrender because she was evicted. She went to a local organization in South Florida and was turned away because they were full. And so she was calling us asking if we would take these two cats. Um, and that is becoming more of a concern for me from an animal welfare standpoint because it feels like the animal welfare community has sort of lost its way in why we started in the first place,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like we started to help homeless animals, to help strays, to reunite them with their families, to keep them safe, to provide resources for owners so that if they were going through something, they had somewhere to take their pet without judgment so that that pet would be safe and could find another chance at finding a home, right? Like,
Mm.
and I feel like rather than us looking at every animal individually, as we're presented with those animals at our door, we're now looking at them as numbers. And
Mhm.
that is not okay. We don't operate our organization that way. We calculate, live release rate because we just want to see where we are, but that's not something that we use to guide how we're operating our organization. And it fluctuates because we are open in mission. There's some months where we're 87, there's some months where we're 96.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's just so much focus on this percentage
Hmm.
that the animals are the ones that are suffering. And
Yeah.
I find that really disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, having the conversation that we had, it was a breath of fresh air to hear somebody with that attitude because it's rare now, which wasn't the case. Like you say, I think most people who started out in this business, that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to help all the animals that needed help. And then somehow it has changed. And mostly not necessarily their fault. They're being judged by a standard that doesn't make any sense when you look at it from animal welfare, from the care of these animals. It doesn't make sense. And it's very frustrating. I think you're not alone in being an open intake shelter that is getting calls and getting animals brought to them from all kinds of places because so many other shelters are closing their doors as soon as they are full to protect that number, to continue to, I don't want to use the words. We always hesitate to use words, no kill, but once upon a time, no kill was a really good thing. And it somehow got taken over by these powers that be, I guess, that changed the definition and changed what it means and changed the scale. So it's frustrating, but it's also refreshing. But you're put in a really tough spot. So I want to touch just briefly because the word nobody ever wants to say is euthanasia. And I think we talked when we did earlier about the difference between warehousing, and, not the warehousing versus euthanasia, that whole dilemma, like that many shelters have either warehoused and closed their doors, um, or done anything to avoid humane euthanasia and turned it into being the absolute worst outcome when it used to be part of it animal sheltering, period. It's just part of it and it's part of the thing. Now it's become the worst possible thing. It's seen as a failure, and it's not a failure of the shelter. So can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on euthanasia and warehousing and that whole challenge?
You know, so in 1994, when I was just a baby and I was starting my career in animal welfare for the Austin Humane Society, who uses no-kill terminology, um, and I am still, my best friend's sister runs that organization. We are very close. Okay,
Mhm.
so I started there. I have a big love for Austin Humane Society, but we use different terminologies.
Mhm.
So I I have struggled with that terminology since the 90s when it first started showing up in pamphlets in our organization because I didn't understand it. And the reason I didn't understand it was because I was clinic supervisor and I was euthanizing animals,
Mhm.
right? So it's very clear to me what no kill started as was, well, we don't euthanize adoptable animals, right? We don't euthanize healthy, adoptable animals with sound temperaments. Okay, well, what about the animals that are severely aggressive and it's not responsible to put them in the community? What about the animals that are not medically treatable, that have conditions that are going to cause this animal to suffer? What about those animals? Well, they're not in that classification, so we can still say we're no kill. Well, no, the general public doesn't believe that because the general public doesn't understand that because they hear no kill, which means nothing is euthanized. So when an animal is euthanized and someone, a volunteer, someone from the public, someone, whatever, finds out that organization has euthanized said animal, you've now lost credibility
Mhm.
from the very people that are trying to support you. And I think that is a problem. The bigger problem is what you're doing to that individual animal for the purpose of using terminology that, in my opinion, was created to bring in donor dollars. And I'm just going to say it. I mean, because people don't understand it. So they're looking at your supporting your organization who uses no-kill terminology, or they're going to support the organization that doesn't, the limited intake kill shelter.
Mhm.
So no-kill terminology now pits these two organizations against each other who should be working together for
Right.
all of these animals, right? And
Mhm.
so when an organization shuts its doors and chooses to not take the sick animals or the animals that have bitten someone and sent a child to the hospital, right? Bite
Mhm.
to the face. Um, I'm not taking those because I'm limited intake. I'm no kill. They go to the city facility who now has to shoulder that and do what's right for the animal and for the community. These two
Mhm.
things are humane and being responsible to the community should go hand in hand, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, so when you have organizations that feel the pressure of being judged for euthanizing animals or having death threats from the community because they're euthanizing animals, because the general public doesn't understand what no kill means.
Mhm.
Um, I think that we're doing a disservice to the animals, we're doing a disservice to the community we serve, and we're doing a disservice to ourselves. Our staff, our teams, our volunteers, our board of directors, those of us that are doing the work to care for these animals every day. And when we have this pressure on each other to achieve a number, I think that that's kind of gross.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good word
Like,
for it.
I think we've lost our way. I
Mhm.
think that there's organizations that should be held accountable for animal neglect. I mean, I don't
Mhm.
know if you're warehousing an animal that it is not responsible to put in the community because it has a behavior issue that is causing it to be aggressive and it's not safe to put that animal into a home with either other animals or the public, and you're keeping it in a kennel for its life. That's really depressing to
No,
like.
I think you're right. I think that's neglect. I see it the same way. I see these animals suffering. When we walk through shelters that do warehouse, we see them, we see these animals suffering. And when I ask about some of them, a lot of directors, not all directors, some directors will say, well, we have this one volunteer who loves that dog and they're the only one who handles it. But if you tell me there's only one person that can handle the dog, I'm going to tell you that you should euthanize that dog. That dog is not safe. It's not safe in the public. It's not safe to adopt out, and it could take your whole organization down if you did. So instead, it's sitting there taking up space, pretty much probably getting worse and being tortured in that situation. So I think that's an outcome that's come because of this, as you so well explained. That is something that's happened because people are so terrified of jeopardizing that no kill status, that number of being, caught euthanizing. They just won't do it, and then the animal pays the price. And
Yeah,
not just
and
that
I will
animal,
say
but all
this,
the animals you don't help because that animal is taking up space and resources in your
right?
facility. They're paying the price.
Yeah. And I will say this, we do struggle with it, right? Because
Mhm.
we love these animals like they're our own.
Yeah.
And when we have stray holds, right? So we get animals in or animal control holds. For some reason, we may be in a situation where we have to hold an animal for a period of time before we can either place that animal up for adoption or another disposition. So, such as euthanasia, if it's not safe to put in the community. So, what happens though, I have a dog here now. Um, who was taken from a situation uh, where she was living on a island, basically a key off of Key West, um, with a population of unhoused individuals. And she was aggressive and she was chasing people off of the island and she's got a bite history. She's not a safe dog. So, but we had to seize her as a result of an arrest. She came into the shelter and we've had to go through a series of steps before we could get ownership of this dog. So it's been weeks. So what happens during that time is the staff get emotionally invested in this dog. They're caring
Right.
for her every day. They're taking her out. They're making sure she has her favorite stuffy. They're giving her treats. They're giving her cuddles, right? Because while they're here with us, we want to make sure that they're having that they're thriving while they're here, that they're not, sad in their kennel, and they're getting love and they're getting the things that they need. So I understand the struggle of getting an animal to trust you and then having to be the one to euthanize it. That sucks. 100%. But it doesn't change the fact that we have to be the ones sometimes to shoulder that responsibility for the animal and for the community. You have to make tough decisions in this job. That's just part of it. You can't just warehouse an animal and put blinders on and keep it there to keep from making a decision, nor should we, as a group, an animal welfare community, be taking these animals and transferring them to a rescue group so
Right.
that the rescue group can put the animal out because they've received a grant that they're getting paid for every animal that they take out of an organization. Like, there's things happening in animal welfare right now that are scaring me. Um, and it's it's terrifying, and it
Yeah.
makes me
To talk
worried
some
for the
about
animals.
that. Talk about how I feel like rescue's role in all of this has also changed. We talk about shelters and how that has changed, but it feels like rescues also, I mean, you mentioned sometimes they're incentivized to pull, X number of dogs to get money. But I feel like there are also a lot of organizations that, have also gone through all this change and they're changing and some are closing down. So talk about your experience with rescues over like the past decade.
Uh, we've had some very good experiences with rescues, and we have a few rescue groups in the Florida Keys. Now, usually our experience with rescue groups center around us working with breed-specific rescue groups for animals that we feel need an extra opportunity to be adopted,
Hmm.
right? So we're sending them out. We don't take animals in from rescues. Um, the local rescues do not take animals from us. And the reason that they don't take them from us is because they don't feel like they're at risk of being euthanized.
Yes, that's the catch
Because,
22, right? That's it right there.
yeah, uh-huh,
Hmm.
because, you know, the animals that, because we don't, our live release rate is, like I said, between 87, 96%, somewhere in there. Annually, it's about 93%. So when they see statistics like this, I think they don't feel like there's any animals here for them to take that would be adopted quickly, because the animals that we would need help with, we have a dog here now. His name is Chance. He's a border collie mix. He was taken from a cruelty situation. um he had an injury to his hip and to his knee, and so we transported him to the vet. We did the surgery, all of these things. He needs help with recuperation. He needs to recuperate in a home. So we've tried to find foster parents. That would be a great rescue opportunity to try to get him into, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they don't, he's not, they can't get him in. They can't get him in and adopt him out real quickly.
Right. Well, he's not at risk too. I hear that from rescues all the time. Like we pull from shelters to save dogs that will die if we don't pull them. And I get that. I foster dogs like that all the time. But I
Well,
think
but it's the ones
rescues
they
will
think.
stop pulling from shelters like yours that are on the surface, they seem like they're succeeding and you are succeeding. You're doing amazing work. So instead of helping you guys, they will pull dogs from shelters and I'm assuming places like Alabama and
Georgia.
Mississippi and
Yeah.
Georgia. Yeah, and bring
And Miami, I
those.
think they're pulling some from the
Yeah.
Miami shelter
Yeah,
as
well,
well. So
Florida
they go and pick and
itself.
choose those. But
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is the animals that we're euthanizing, it's because it's the right decision to euthanize that animal.
Right.
So when they say they're not at risk, it's because the ones that are here and up for adoption are the healthy, sound, we're going to do whatever we can for those animals. The
Yeah.
animals that are at risk of being euthanized are either behaviorally aggressive or have a medical condition that's not treatable.
Right.
And we'll treat everything. We just sent a dog up to University of Florida because he had two bladders, and
Wow.
we got a grant and we did surgery. Yeah, it was a pretty complicated surgery. Dr. Whipple, our veterinarian, and the veterinarians up there did his surgery and found that he actually didn't have two bladders. He had a bladder and a uterus. He's
Interesting.
he's now Chipette. But when we have cases that if a veterinarian says this is treatable, if we do this,
Yeah.
We have funds set up and resources set up so that we can do that to bring that animal up to adoptable status. So rescues don't, I think the reason that they're not pulling any animals from us is because if an animal's at risk of being euthanized, it's because it needs to be euthanized.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not a, we don't euthanize for space. It's
Right.
not.
Right. So I have a bunch of questions here, but I'm going to try to keep this as quick as we can. But I'm really, can you give us just an example of so owner surrenders? I don't know if you guys are experiencing an increase at all. I know you didn't right after the pandemic, but it seems to be something that is happening all over the place, and especially for an open intake, they end up with the owner surrenders coming from all, as you mentioned, other jurisdictions. But what's a typical reason for an owner surrender for you guys?
Right now, the Florida Keys is experiencing a housing crisis.
Hmm.
Affordable housing is really difficult to find, and affordable pet-friendly housing is even more challenging. So the number one reason for surrender right now is moving.
Right.
Somebody's either, there's also a few instances where people are moving here.
Yeah.
They move down here sight unseen, like I want to live in Key West. So they get in their van with their dogs and their kids and they drive down here and they're like, wait, I can't, there's not an apartment down here. I
Yeah.
can't just find an apartment.
Yeah.
No. So like
Yeah.
that, it's all number one is moving. Um,
Yeah. We're hearing a lot of that, housing being the thing. It makes me think that these animal welfare advocates that are out there trying to fix the problem need to put some of that effort and money towards affordable housing, pet-friendly affordable housing, because it's a big driver of the numbers right now, I think, not just in Key West. I mean, Key West obviously is going to be worse because of your locale, but it's everywhere. It's all over.
what's interesting is in 2024 and 2025, excuse me, we received a grant from the a Better Cities grant that we used to create a fund to assist with paying pet deposits for individuals that needed to move and couldn't pay the pet deposit for housing.
Yeah.
Two people took
That's it.
advantage of that.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know what that is. So um I think it was probably just bigger because, down here to rent a 400 square foot apartment, it's $3,500 a
Wow.
month. So
Wow.
the pet deposit was a dent.
Yeah.
So it didn't help that much. But yeah, I do agree that resources need to be allocated for assisting with this housing issue because it's just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. All over. It's growing and it's going to keep driving it. And that's something that spay neuter really can't fix. I mean, spay
No.
neuter can do a lot of things, and then we do need to put more money towards it. But that's the one big challenge. And you guys, I remember when we had our conversation, spay neuter is, you guys do have some good resources for that. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have a medical department, we have a veterinarian, a shelter veterinarian, and we spay neuter obviously our own animals before they're adopted. And then we have an affordable or free spay neuter for the public. And then we have a free TNVR program.
That's fabulous. I think it helps to be in Key West because veterinarians probably are happy to get a job in Key
You
West.
would think that, but no, we've
No?
got a challenge hiring vets. Yeah.
Wow. Well, everybody has, but I would think you would have an advantage.
I
Just
thought so too. And we have a house. We had to
oh my
incorporate
gosh.
housing for our veterinarian because it's so
Yeah,
expensive to live here.
that
So
makes sense.
we had a donor that blessed us with the house and said, put your vet here. And so that was part of the package, and we still had difficulty.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
luckily, we've got Dr. Whipple now, so I think she's going to stay for a while.
That's great. I think shelters all over this country, the board of directors of shelters all over this country, they need to be thinking about that. How can we make this area an attractive place for a veterinarian? Like
Mhm.
you got to woo them. There's just not that many of them, and it's so critical. I mean, it will make or break you as a shelter having a veterinary access. So, yeah, you guys were smart to find housing. Okay, so if I gave you a magic wand and you could do anything to fix, to change animal welfare, what would you do with that wand?
Um, I would want to open dialogue between all of us as a group so that we can look at how we're operating to find ways to work together for the animals And honestly, I would just get rid of the whole no kill terminology.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just, it's not helping.
Yeah.
Um, and anything around that, anything that sounds like it, all of that, I just think it creates confusion and
Hmm.
pressure,
Hmm.
and the animals end up getting lost in it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really well said. I would love to be able to give you that magic wand and make that happen. But you know what the thing about that is? It's not magic. We could do that. People could decide that we've had enough. We don't want to keep letting this language divide us, and we want to work together to solve this because, as you've explained some of the things that you guys do, it's not that complicated to do it. We just have to choose to do it and to do it to work together to make it happen.
And you got to be strong enough to do it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just you have to you
you
have
do.
to make difficult decisions in this job, in this
Right,
field. I mean, there's no way around it. You got to do it every day. And
right.
it is hard, and you have to be able to set things up so that you're resilient to it. I mean, because you can't stay. I've been doing this 32 years now. There are moments, many moments, where I'm fantasizing about something else, bagging groceries at Publix. I don't know, but like
Yeah,
it is, you can't, it's not easy. You know, we're dealing with living things, and we're dealing with living things that we care about, that we're emotionally invested in, and
yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard, which is another reason why working together, supporting each other, having each other's backs is so important. And it's so missing in much of the animal sheltering and rescue world. And I personally want to see that change. I want to see us find ways to work together locally to solve our problems and to stop, just fighting about semantics and all of that. So I know that there's a situation in Florida that we talked about, and that is new, and I don't know that everybody who is in sheltering in Florida knows what's going on, but I know it's going to impact you guys, and you're bracing for it and probably having lots of meetings to figure out how the heck you're going to handle this. So you want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the state of Florida right now?
Yeah, it's pretty scary. So, um, our governor DeSantis has put forth legislation that eliminates property tax for homeowners throughout Florida. What that means, though, is that local governments and counties have to look at funding and the loss of revenue that that's going to create and the services that they provide, and how to replace it or how to cut it. And so there are municipalities throughout Florida, ours being one, who are currently evaluating what does it look like if there's no animal control? What does it look like if animal control is given back to the sheriff's department? We have we have a contract with Monroe County to operate animal control from mile marker 0 to mile marker 70. So that means that we're doing the stray calls, the overnight emergency calls, the bite investigations, the cruelty investigations, the dangerous dog investigations. We're holding strays for a period of time so that people can reclaim them. We're receiving own surrenders, all of those things that are important to a community in terms of not only for those animals, but for public safety. So, our animal control contract makes up about 40% of our $3.6 million budget. Um, and if the county chooses to make a decision to either cut that funding by a percent or eliminate the entire ordinance, that's going to affect the animals in the community. It's going to affect the pet owners in the community. It's going to affect the tourists in the community. It's going to affect the whole community in general. And I mean, we just have to look north to the Everglades and the Redlands to see what a community looks like without animal control. Um, and it's scary, and it makes me worry for the animals. And it makes me worry for the animals throughout the state because, the Florida Keys SPCA will look at, our mission and have to reprioritize things. So that means we're going to have to look at the programs and services that we offer and determine, well, is it more of a priority to get these animals off the street, and how are we going to fund that without the animal control contract so that we can keep them safe and try to get them home? Is it important for us to continue cruelty investigation? Is that more important than the humane educations that we're providing, those programs? Is it more important than the behavior resources? There's just, and I'm not
Yeah.
making a decision one way or the other right now, but it's organizations are going to be forced to have to look at what they're doing and what the priorities are and how they're going to fund them.
Yeah.
And it's scary. And I don't think people realize that when they're looking at this property
Yeah, they're
tax.
just thinking, oh, I don't have to pay property tax. This will be great. But they're not thinking about what happens as a result of that stream of revenue going away. Yeah, it stinks because it feels like, you guys are busting tail down there to try to do this, and now you're about to get tossed a big handicap potentially, unless people speak up, voters speak up and say we prioritize this. And I think that's the case in communities across the country, not just Florida, that if the voters say this is where we want our money to be spent, they can have some power in that, but they have to speak up, they have to advocate, they have to, vote their conscience, and they have to know what's going on, which I think a lot of people don't know, and they won't know until it impacts them. And
Yeah.
so I
And I
hope
do
you're
worry. I worry because I read about some of these things that are happening in the country, that this would be a door, because it looks like there's other municipal shelters they're using this reasoning to sort of be like, well, I can't take your stray.
yeah, yeah,
I
we
don't
don't
have
have
the
the
funding
funding.
for it.
Hmm.
And then what happens to that animal?
Right. And the scary part of all that is every time you turn these animals away, you're making your problem worse because they are multiplying. They don't disappear, they don't vanish. They're still out there, but now they're out there multiplying. And every day that we don't take those animals in, we make the challenge harder for the people down the road and
Yeah.
and the animals.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I so appreciate you having this conversation with me, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I hope that we can make our way down to the Florida Keys someday to
Yes,
see
I
it
would
in
love that.
action. We would love that too. We've been as far as Redland. We have been down there, and I
Well,
do
then
know
you know what it
exactly
looks
what
like
you're.
in the Redlands.
Oh yeah, we drove around to the feeding stations. We got some great footage of stray dogs that we still use to this day because they were
Oh,
just
if you have
everywhere.
that, if you could send it to me, I would love to share
We
that
have
with
one of a
Tammy.
dog running down the street in the rain that I think we use all the time. So yeah, it's been we definitely saw that, and there's some great people up there trying really hard, but they're all private nonprofits because there is no municipal services, which is a shame. Anyway, thanks so much for your time
Thank you for the
today.
opportunity. I appreciate it very
Yeah,
much.
well, we appreciate you.
Thank you.